What's it?
Oh, recorded.
Oh, recording in progress. And,
Sorry.
I also worked for the Ulster County Research Recovery Agency with Emily for the better part of 10 years. So I have a passion for waste conversion.
Great, and we are recording this, and we have Chris and Laura online on the Zoom. Would you just briefly introduce yourselves?
And unmute first.
Hi, my name is Chris Pletcher. I work with reuse organizations and other social enterprises, and I'm over in Central New York. I was just curious what you all folks are doing out there. Thanks.
Laura, glad to see you.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm on another phone call too. Laura Petita, a legislator covering Esopus, retired from the New Paltz Reuse and Recycling Center, and also Chair of Public Works.
Okay, great, and definitely this. So I'm Melissa Everett. I'm Executive Director of Sustainable Hudson Valley, which is a little like being the Wizard of Oz. We are a climate-forward organization that has done a lot of kind of people-powered initiatives to accelerate progress by accelerating participation, coordination, and motivation across the spectrum of dealing with clean energy, materials, transportation, and more. We are just wrapping up our contract with Ulster County, which has a kind of deep emotional thread, because the exploration of the Reuse Innovation Center started with our dear friend and board member for a while, the late John Wackman, who began to explore it with Dave Bennick from Reuse Consulting, who you'll hear from in a moment. I'm just going to offer like 3 minutes, which will take no more than 5 minutes, right? Framing this, and then you'll hear from Barbara Todd and Dave Bennick, who have been the main project team here. So, first to say, we discovered the opportunity, we discovered that the county was taking the initiative to fund a strategic plan and feasibility study for a reuse innovation center. And we weren't gonna nibble on it, and then we said, oh, what the hell, and jumped. And have been working very methodically with the Department of the Environment, which is the organization we reported to. The project has been broken down into 5 main deliverables with stakeholder engagement built through it. Special sessions at every juncture, and also just an open door for people really to share their views and concerns, whatever. We've been required by the design of the project to make decisions along the way and to explain and justify every decision in pretty extensive deliverables, like I think 120-ish pages, with prioritization matrices to justify what materials go where, and pretty big deal. We are now presenting from a final report that is a succinct 27 pages, maybe something like that.
Something like that.
And we've been trying to stuff the down sleeping bag into the thimble of saying everything in a very tight frame. But I just want to lay out a few things. First of all, we understand the assignment to have been to create a reuse innovation center. And there are many big goals for recycling and for recycling-based industries and so forth in Ulster County. We are recommending that this project be about reuse, be fairly tightly defined, so that it's low-ish tech, so that it is stuff that can be co-located near a residential neighborhood where it's accessible, not noisy and smelly, and doesn't need special permits. And that does mean that not every recycling innovation that the county cares about, we're not recommending that they all fall into this frame. But what I have come to realize, or believe at least, is that this is the first in a series of initiatives, and that Ulster County itself is really the innovation center. We've been tasked with figuring out what should happen in one facility, but the reuse and recycling innovation that this county is capable of is much larger. So we are going to tell you about basically an ecosystem of enterprises. And by enterprise, they could be private businesses, they could be mom and pop, they could be worker co-ops, they could be artist collectives, they could be special projects under contract to the Resource Recovery Agency, or a university research project could find its way in there. So we're not at all biased in terms of it being private or public. We really think that the partnership aspect is the strength of this project. But we are strong in thinking that if we try to make it everything, it's going to be nothing. And that having a kind of guiding logic to what is in it is going to make it a stronger thing. So I'm going to introduce Barbara and Dave in a second. I'm going to say two more things. The first is a shout out to the Department of Environment. Europa, the modest Europa, and her predecessor, Nick, are the administrative warriors. They have been real taskmasters in looking at every single deliverable and saying, you got to be clearer about the reason for this. You got to double check the supporting data, so that this has really been a pretty disciplined, structured project. They have also been wonderful thought partners in just considering how this thing could be, how it could work, what are the options. So with them, I have been able to delegate this to Barbara Todd and our consultant, Dave Benning. Barbara came to Sustainable Hudson Valley 2 years ago with background in corporate software quality assurance, which means being the buck stops person on very hard things, and in arts marketing and fine art photography. And she has just been the entropy reverser of Sustainable Hudson Valley. She came to us not knowing that there was such a thing as a garbage nerd, and I think she has become one, or else she's faking it to make this project look good. Dave Bennick, the proprietor of Reuse Consulting, is definitely not faking it, and he has numbers of the dozens of projects and thousands of tons of waste he's diverted through his advocacy. Consulting. Reuse Consulting has provided a model for the first Reuse Innovation Center in Bellingham, Washington, built on mainly building materials, but many other cool things. That has provided a basis for for some ideas that we recommend replicating, but also some things not to do. Because we've realized that Ulster County has a level of opportunity that we don't have all the constraints that the Bellingham model has. And we have a very different set of goals. So with that, I'm gonna just say one final thing and then hand it to Barbara and Dave. Final thing is that after over a year, this is a handoff. And we couldn't be more thrilled. And certainly at the end of it, if you have questions in December, we're going to pick up the phone for sure. But it's really coming back to the county to determine how you want to handle this. We have specific recommendations, but it's time for us to let go. We do not expect to play any role in the implementation of the Reuse Innovation Center. And that is kind of by principle to ensure the independence and the integrity of the recommendations that we've provided for you. We are going to keep working in the circular economy. We just adore this work. So we will continue to host and love the Repair Cafe. We have a little exploration going with several counties on how to increase textile diversion. And we have decided that as our next step with this, complementing the RIC, but also engaging all the counties of the region. February 9th, we want to throw a circular economy summit. And if by chance there is a baked RIC plan that can be a panel or a breakout, or if we can support it in any way through our work, we'd love to. But that's that's where we're going, in a complete friendship and appreciation for this opportunity. So take it away, Barbara and Dave.
Okay, first of all, although I know a lot about testing software, I'm not a hardware expert. So we're actually using the speaker on this laptop. So that's why I suggest coming a little closer so that people will be able to hear you if you say anything. And so that Dave will be able to hear you if you ask him any questions.
Barbara, can people in the back hear me?
Well, that's
They're moving
what I'm
forward.
saying. I'm asking them to move up so that they can.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but I think it'll help. Can you guys hear Dave? Say something, Dave.
Hi, this is Dave Bennick.
Okay, great. Everybody can hear you, Dave. You're loud and clear.
Okay.
Hold on a second and I will screen share and let everybody see the slideshow. All right, and then I think we'll just go into slideshow mode. How's that? Everybody can see that? Do we want to dim the lights or put out some of them or anything, maybe?
I'll do that.
Thanks.
I can see that online, so that's working.
Yay, something's working. Okay. So as Melissa said, this is our final report for the Reuse Innovation Center feasibility study and strategic plan. And we're so glad you could join us. We've already done introductions, I think, and Melissa says she's a senior support person, but of course she's vastly more than that. I don't know why that was there. Okay. And so this is what we're going to try to cover today. The phases and deliverables, just as a high-level overview for anyone who's not familiar of what this project consisted of. There were 6 phases and there were deliverables for all of them. And we'll get into that. We want to talk a little bit about all the stakeholder engagement, which was deliverable number 1 and continuously exercised throughout the project. And we pulled in a lot of really good, helpful comments, and all of our deliverables, and especially the final report, were very much had integrated into them the thoughts of and ideas and suggestions and concerns of stakeholders in Ulster County. We also did, presentations. This is the final presentation, and I think it may be like the 9th one, including all of the committees and so forth that we've shown to. And there are also 5 recorded public sessions like this one that you can find on YouTube if you want to see background or how things came about earlier on. And then we're just going to talk about conclusions and recommendations of the final report, what everybody's been hoping for, and the decisions that will need to be made, some of the heavy-duty decisions that will need to be made by Ulster County and its representatives. Okay, what is a Reuse Innovation Center? Well, we've got this definition here. It's kind of important because it guided us in what we were doing. And also, I think I want to distinguish it from a waste recovery park or a place to store garbage, which it is not. So Dave, I'm going to let you talk about this one.
Okay. That's great. And so I hope everybody can hear me, but Dave Bennick here. Yeah, one of the things you'll see some of the photos in this presentation that will be from other reuse innovation centers and other similar efforts. So the photos are just sprinkled in to try and give you a flavor of that this is really happening, and some people learn better visually. So we've got that going on in here. But the Reuse Innovation Center is, what is it? Well, the first thing it is, it's whatever you want it to be. And we're really excited to see how it plays out in Ulster County versus other places. The thing is, it's, the idea of it is to have, instead of having, after helping 200 individual reuse businesses who all felt like they needed to struggle on their own without help, without any kind of cooperative effort, they just had to try and survive like a normal business would, and try and benefit the community, but not be given any special help to do that. After doing that for so long and just saying, what, we really deserve, um, help. We are benefiting the community in such an amazing way. So, but also we could help each other by having numerous businesses work synergistically together. Some of them might be on the supply side, some of them might be on the demand side, some of them are in the middle selling the material. Um, uh, and there are nonprofits involved, for-profits involved. There are people giving away material for free. There are people recycling material. But in all, the idea is that we have this sense of a cooperative effort where different businesses are working together, and they may be co-located together or they may be at different sites, but they're all working together to divert waste and help the community.
Okay, awesome. And what is the definition of a waste recovery park, Dave?
So in Wisconsin, we are part of an effort to start a reuse innovation center there that would be part of a waste recovery park. And what that is literally taking landfill space that hasn't been turned into a landfill yet, but is allocated for that, and taking that space and placing businesses on that who are going to do everything they can to keep material out of the landfill, actually using the landfill to keep things out of the landfill, right? So, so there would be composting, there would be concrete crushing, there would be metal recycling, there would be a reuse innovation center. And if you had to say, well, how would you prioritize, or, which material would go? Well, they would all want it to go to the Reuse Innovation Center first. And if it couldn't be reused, then it would go to recycling. So there would be a lot of reuse and recycling going on in that waste recovery park. And once everything, that waste stream filters through the waste recovery park, well, if it makes it through all of those businesses without being saved, then it goes to the landfill. But it has a lot of hands and eyes on it before it is wasted. So that is the theory with the waste recovery park.
Okay. So just to be clear on the goals of the project, this is basically taken straight from our contract with the Department of the Environment. Maximize diversion opportunities from the landfill and make sure that relevant community participation activities happen. Support the local circular economy via the programs and activities identified. And as Melissa mentioned earlier, it's seen as one solution, not the solution to all things waste diversion. And we tried during this course of the project to figure out what works with an RIC and what wouldn't be part of an RIC. It made the most sense for Ulster County. And out of scope, organics, toxics, heavier industrial activities, as Melissa mentioned earlier. This is just an overview of the different phase deliverables to kind of put them all in context. As you can see across the top is deliverable number 1, which is stakeholder engagement, which goes throughout the whole, which has happened throughout the entire project. Understand the waste stream was number 1. We looked at a lot of different sources of data, which I'll have a list of a little later on. There was site visits to a lot of reuse businesses and nonprofit organizations in Ulster County when Dave was first here to understand, you know, where things are coming from. And of course, we went to Ulster County Resource Recovery Association site on Flatbush Road, and we had a tour, and we had a very good understanding of what went on there. And Dave spent a day on the tipping floor just seeing what came in. And of course, that's at the end of the waste stream, right? When it gets there, almost the end, and then ultimately it will go out to the landfill. But at the beginning, where waste is generated, all the way through to the end, we're looking for opportunities to divert waste. And then we identified what diversion opportunities there are, what sort of materials make good diversion opportunities for an RIC. Part of that is, what does the community want? What's this particular community interested in? And part of it is also what turns around quickly, because you don't just want to start storing it in a big warehouse and have not be able to do anything with it, right? It has to get circulated back into the circular economy. And and identify realistic ways to do that. In other words, things that had proven business or functional models. And then, what's the best model? There's lots of different models for an RIC, which Dave will get into a little bit later. It doesn't, there's private ones, there's mixture ones, there's nonprofit run ones, there's different ways to do it. And of course, Dave is the expert because he's been traveling around helping people start reuse businesses and some reuse innovation centers for some time now. And then based on our understanding of what it should consist of, in phase 5, we figured out what kind of site would support that, what kind of physical location or locations might support that, and what would be best. And then, here we are with our final plan, which is what we're talking about today. All along, I think Melissa mentioned this, but I'll just reiterate, throughout the course of this project, for each deliverable, there was a significant written component of our research and our communications and our efforts in a report on what we found for that deliverable. And each one was submitted as a draft, reviewed by the Department of the Environment as part, and I think it was usually by Committee Europa. And we had multiple, comments back from them. We had lots of guidance. We talked to them back and forth a lot about what, make sure that we're meeting the contractual obligations and sticking with the goal. And then there'd be a second version, and it'd be okay, and you move on to the next deliverable, because each of these deliverables is built on the previous deliverable. And there were public sessions, as I mentioned earlier, and many of which are available on YouTube. Okay, Dave, you want to talk about the analysis of the waste stream that we did? These are, incidentally, this first bullet points are all the sources, well, not even all, but most of the sources that we used in understanding what the waste stream is in Ulster County. Go ahead, Dave. I hope Dave is still there.
I'm sorry, muted. Now I'm back. I'm there, right?
You're here.
So here's the thing. We were really thankful that people contributed these resources to us so that we could better understand the waste stream in Ulster County. And but even then, documents aren't, there's not the level of detail, there's not photographs, there's not hands-on, it's really, and a lot of them aren't really focused on reuse or what could have been kept out of the waste stream. Most of them were about what did go to the waste stream, for example. And so we had to read between the lines. I'm used to doing that. I'm used to looking for, desperately seeking out opportunities. I'm looking for value. I'm looking for any way that I can save this material, without it costing more or taking more time and things like that. Now, we know that when it comes to things like mattresses and things like that, that communities have made the choice. In some communities, they made the choice to say, look, we know it's going to cost a little bit more to recycle than it is to throw away. And there are, different opinions on whether it really costs more or not. But the thing is, it is a reality that we are faced with, in most communities where we are fighting to make to do the right thing, to do the responsible thing, and we're often fighting against um, people or situations where waste is essentially subsidized, and that reuse and responsible choices are looked on as being a burden. And so we look at these documents and we try to understand what's going on as a basis, for like, how much material is flowing through Ulster County? And if you looked at it, and you said it's a waste stream, a stream kind of implies water, right? Like it's a river of waste through Ulster County. And these documents are snapshots of like what happened, or a review of what happened over a period of time, like a year. And and if you look at Ukra's tipping floor as the precipice of a waterfall, where that flow of materials is about to flow over and be gone forever, like once it passes off of that tipping floor, it's gone. So and we also looked at some of here's one thing, like the city of Kingston. Thankfully, they provided us the permit data for a period of time. Maybe it was last year, and it was really interesting to see um, the different types of permits and the level of activity and stuff like that. Um, because when we look at activities, we look at the standard waste that you would expect. This house was demolished, that type of building was remodeled, that kitchen was renovated, things like that. So you can get information, you can get ideas of how much material is there. You can get information about what types of material went through places like Ukra when it came to glass and paper and building materials and or C&D and so on. And so we supplemented that with as much hands-on and visual inspection as we could, to get a feel for what's happening. And this is the same. It's really similar to all the other communities we work in, where you just see this waste and you see opportunities, and you're looking for a way to make small tweaks that aren't going to be a real burden on anyone, to see that this stuff gets saved. So that's why the analysis was really important up front, to see what we're after. The bottom line is that we found that there was a lot of materials being wasted, and that's no surprise to any of you. It's just that there was value in the waste stream. There was recyclables in the waste stream. All things that we think the RIC would be a good choice for removing these things from the waste stream, whether it's way upstream or right at the precipice of that waterfall of waste, so to speak. That there were different ways to do that. And I was thankful to have that time to look into the waste stream.
A little bit about textiles. Actually, can I ask you, Melissa, to talk a little bit about the effort toward textiles that's going on? It's kind of exciting.
I'll just mention it, yeah. Parallel to what the this county reuse innovation center project is, we've been facilitating a regional climate roadmap and toolkit with a bunch of adventurous experts and advocates, about 90 plus folks, including some of the recycling coordinators of multiple counties. And, waste is 12% of our carbon footprint. And the materials management world is under directive from, executive order to reduce 70% by 2030, sort of just like everybody else. And so we said, let's think about one material that everybody in the region could collaborate on. Just give it a whirl and try to move the needle. And so they huddled and came back and said textiles. And we've learned that there is a B corporation called Helpsy that actually responsibly recycles those textiles. I mean, they collect them, that's cool, but they don't pile up in the global south. They actually get remanufactured in the US or upcycled or wholesaled. So there is interest in sort of creating that responsible collection, ecosystem, and that can feed this project. So I'm very excited about that.
Just to give you an idea of the complexity and level of detail we went into in evaluating the waste stream, this is, we assigned scores to all of these factors, and based on all these factors to all of these items down the left side. And I can let Dave talk about that a little bit, but just understand that we did a similar exercise for most of the phases, and we'd have a very, very long slideshow if we really went into an incredible amount of detail or showed you all these things, but just so you get a feel for it. Dave, you want to say anything about this?
Yeah. First thing is, thank you, Europa, for having created the template for this, which is awesome. And but here's the thing: we go to different areas and we have different approaches for the reuse businesses that we've helped start. Which, we've helped over 200 reuse businesses throughout North America, and so every place we go is customized. Every place has a different approach. Every place has different priorities. And so, let's say that one of your priorities is greenhouse gas, emissions, or embodied carbon or toxicity of an item or something like that. And you're seeing these things being wasted. And, you're understanding that when something is wasted, that something else needs to be produced to replace it. So, however much energy or whatever toxics that produces to have to produce a new material, it's so much better to just reuse something and not have to worry about producing a bunch of new emissions or pollutants and that kind of thing. So different people would say different things are their priority, whether it's somebody to say, I'm worried about mattresses, another person to say, I'm worried about paint or whatever, and luckily we don't have to choose. Once we get a reuse innovation center that's really up and running, we don't have to choose one or the other. We're doing all of them at the same time, right? This isn't a tire recycling operation. This is a material diversion effort, and it involves all kinds of material. Like the Bellingham Reuse Innovation Center has 25 different material types that we focus on, and all at the same time. And yeah, a lot of them are related to building materials, not all of them. We have textiles, we have electronics, we have furniture, things like that as well. So so you take all those things that you might think are important, and you assign them a number in this matrix of a number of importance, and then how that material type relates to that and create a multiplier. And so you end up with a number, and at the end, you total up all the numbers and say, here's what's scoring higher, you know. Now, scrap metal, say, well, why is that scoring higher? It's because scrap metal takes a lot of energy to produce. If you waste it, you have to generate, you know, you have to use that energy all over again, and you have to mine more ore out of the ground and things like that. So it has bigger impacts than like wood would, something made of wood. So there are other ways that you can score higher on this matrix as well. But that's basically what it's all about, was to see what kind of materials, if we're going to, you know, get started, what would we want to start worrying about or focusing on, and that would, you know, likely succeed or benefit the overall operation in the beginning, especially when you're trying to find, you know, a way to make this profitable, a way to stabilize this operation, and then so that you can move forward from there. And so that's why some of these materials are listed in this order. But the main thing is that every community is different. Everybody's list would be in a different order. And this is just a one way to look at it. And, you know, I'll say one thing. In Washington State, one of the new reuse innovation centers that just started in October, some of the funding that they received was focused on a couple of different material type, like plastics and building materials. So guess what? That's two items that they're very focused on because their funding is focused on it. And so you know, we are going to adapt to different situations and different needs based on whatever situation we find ourselves in.
Okay, thanks, Dave. The next phase was identifying the best materials for the RSC to use and opportunities to use them. And, you know, I just listed the factors here. I didn't show you another whole sheet of detailed stuff, but you can kind of see the level of detail, again, that we went into evaluating and figuring out what to do with what. Any questions so far? Oh, okay, good. Keep going. These were we identified as some top material reuse opportunities based on their scoring, based on feedback that we got from the community, based on the ease of integrating them into a model by which, you know, a business model that would succeed in diverting them. There's demand for things that there's demand for and things that have a proven business model. And here's just some examples of some items. I think this is made out of reused wood. That's a pretty cool, I don't know if you call it a sculpture or a swing set or both. Looks pretty natural to me though. Okay, and these are some actual businesses that are in reuse, and there's quite a variety of them. None of these are, you know, necessarily ones that would partner or wouldn't partner with the Reuse Innovation Center. That's all to be determined, but of course these are ones that we're a bit familiar with. Some of them that are local have been visited. You get the idea. There's lots of uses for lots of stuff. Okay. As part of the conceptual plan, we identified the components of the Reuse Innovation Center that we thought were most important. if you look at the gray area here, please also assume that that is part of the area of the Reuse Innovation Center. It requires a significant outdoor space for storage of things that don't have to be kept out of the weather, but maybe, there'd be a covered area as part of that, and there'd be just open space as part of that. And that's a given for the Reuse Innovation Center. We talked about a little bit about, well, I don't know how much we get into it, but you'll hear a little more as we go forward about the importance of starting with training. We thought that's a nice way to start getting into the Reuse Innovation Center, training for people who would participate in the deconstruction industry, trying to build up a deconstruction industry, because to deconstruct, you can save a lot of materials versus demolition, and that would start sourcing useful materials for the RIC. Dave, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So one thing is the green area is really a large area, and that's for storage of materials, and that makes sense. You'd need a lot of area for that. And the brown area, you'd say, wow, that's a pretty big area as well. And the idea is that we aren't just passively working this material through. We aren't just sitting it there and hoping somebody comes and gets it. The members of the IRC, the different businesses, some of them actually are the demand, right? They want to make a product out of reclaimed wood, let's say. And the reclaimed wood comes from other members of the RIC, other businesses. So you have some businesses, like I said, that are supply and some are demand. And some of these businesses that are producing products, why is that important? Well, a lot of the materials that we're handling are not something that you would normally think someone would buy. They might seem like waste to a lot of people. Short lengths of 2x4s, scraps of plywood or something like that. And so our job is to, instead of passively having a stack of them and hoping somebody comes along, there are countless short 2x4s and things like that that would just accumulate, and we can't afford to wait. We want to be more proactive. And so we have these different businesses. They're co-located. Some of them are co-located together. The materials coming in, they are taking some of that material to make their products, which is a way to save that material. And other things that are going on, there's a training center that is right beside that workshop space. And there's, the repair station that's right beside that. And there's probably even a tool library and all these other fun stuff going on in these different red spaces. And it's all by design. The training aspect of it is huge. People in the community, younger people, especially that are maybe a little jaded, wondering how they're going to save the world. And we instantly give them a chance to do that through their careers, And so that's a really important part. We're trying to train up people to join the circular economy, and whereas everyone else is kind of focused on the linear economy. So yeah, the space, this is based on a large warehouse space, these ratios, and that's yeah. And again, you're right. Some of the gray area involves, like, you wouldn't stack bricks inside if you could stack them outside. And so there's a number of things that would be going on outside as well.
And you've got a tool library here, and the idea is that members of the RIC can share them. They can be used for training, and equipment can be shared, and costs can be saved. Again, enabling the growth of circular economy businesses and nonprofits or other organizations that are part
And
of
the
it.
tool library is an example of something that can draw people from the community in to discover other aspects of the center.
Much like the training. Any questions about that?
Looks like there's someone chatting in. I don't know if that's a question or not.
Yes, there is something in the chat. Let's see. Ah, okay. Laura Petit says, I don't see an area for education and repair cafes. Hopefully I can actually hit the back button on this. Yes. So there's a classroom meeting room.
Yeah.
And there's specifically a repair station.
Yeah, and that's to be flexibly used for all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that the classroom is surrounded by all of those things is the students could be trained in repair. They could be trained in these remanufacturing operations. They might produce their own products that get put in the high-end showroom. It's all together. The tool library is there to provide tools for some of their work, so they don't have to have their own tools. And but the training operations often have a budget for tools as well. And so it's all really exciting stuff, but it is included in this diagram here.
And the brown space is also intended to be usable for meeting spaces and conceivably a repair cafe. Okay, Laura asks, will the tool library be available to the public to borrow like library books?
Can be.
Yeah. One thing about tool libraries, like the newest Reuse Innovation Center in Shoreline, Washington has a tool library, and the tool library is almost as big as the center as the rest of it. So they are soon going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of members where you can a sliding scale membership fee is paid, and it allows them, funding to continue their work. But the materials, the tools are available for to borrow for free, and that's the whole basis of it. But it does have its own funding, folks. It's not like it's just magically happening. They had to seek out funding specifically for that. In fact, one of the photos later in this presentation is of the Shoreline Reuse Innovation Center's tool library area. So you'll see that coming up.
Okay. We thought a lot about what should happen first and what should happen second, and it seems to be vitally important in terms of the potential success as to what order things are done in. Phase 1, planning, policy making, proof of concept. Yeah, first of all, really, it needs to be established who's going to be doing what, who's going to be running what kind of model is going to happen in terms of ownership. And, there's been discussion of whether Ulster County Resource Recovery Association might be in charge of it, or whether there should be, a nonprofit, or whether there should be some other form of structure. It's something that really has to come right up front.
And in the report, we actually go into a little more detail on recommendations so that we're not just tossing it back to you.
Yeah.
But anyway.
We kind of carefully analyzed the pros and cons of different models. We looked at different existing models, and you'll see a little bit more about that in here. And there's a great deal more in the final report and in the conceptual plan as well.
Is that making sense to everybody? Because this is where rubber is meeting road.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some discussion about policies like flow control for construction and demolition materials, and potentially a deconstruction ordinance. Dave described one in Portland, Oregon, that started by requiring deconstruction for historic buildings and then kind of, increased it. So, creating the policy context, creating the roles and responsibilities among the county agencies, designing the systems for diversion through the county's materials management system so that this is really meeting county goals. And then proof of concept, some small activities to demonstrate the training and the sourcing and the marketing and get it all working.
And again, the upfront training is very important because you have to have actually a skilled workforce that can do deconstruction, of course, before you pass a deconstruction ordinance. And Dave has told us a cautionary tale about Milwaukee failing to do that. So we took that seriously in terms of pointing that out in here. Okay, I don't want to miss this one important point, though, that we'll talk more about it, but the idea that we came up with is that there should be a proof of concept period, a smaller version to see how the thing works and all the parts work together and what is accomplished by it before going on to the full-fledged RIC. Phase 2 would be after the initial proof of concept period, anchor operations and core business for the actual full-fledged RIC. And then continuing to bring in more partnering reuse businesses and organizations, and then establishing a repair business and workforce training operation, or rather, expanding on, let's say, what's already hopefully been started in the proof of concept period. Sourcing plan, we identified a number of areas. This isn't necessarily comprehensive. There may be other ways. And this was heavily influenced by the thoughts and feelings and needs of stakeholders in Ulster County. We heard a lot of feedback on it and we very much appreciate it. So one thing is to require box stores, other large producers to set aside certain materials, to sequester certain materials. That would be a policy change. We talked about diversion before the tipping floor at UCRA and at transfer stations, drop-off places at transfer stations. That, of course, is at almost to the end of the waste stream, but we want to incur diversion early in the waste stream, middle of the waste stream, end of the waste stream, any way we can and everywhere we can. Get architects and renovation contractors would be a significant source of materials and demand for materials. As Dave mentioned earlier, it's an ecosystem. There's supply and demand implicit in it. Collection bins for priority materials, sourcing by participating enterprises for their specific uses. Dave has pointed out that throughout the entire life cycle of the RIC, there's always going to be developing more and more partnerships and relationships and seeking out ways to turn over this material. Marketing plan, very high level here, because you can get into great amount of detail about what to market to who and exactly how and what sources and when. But here's some ideas. Building awareness up front, we're going to get the public involved, make people understand all the different things, all the different ways that the RIC can be useful to them. Training, of course, skill set that could help them with careers. Doing in the beginning, especially during the proof of concept, there could be pop-up sales after a few specific projects are done in, say, deconstruction projects, or obtaining from other very upstream sources. Online wish list building. Dave has said that it's been very useful in his RIC out in Bellingham, Washington, to have a website in which you can go and say, hey, I'm really looking for, a whole bunch of drywall, or I'm really looking for a whole bunch of oak wood or whatever. And then it's known that that's being searched for, so when they find something like that, they can go back and match it up against what people's wish lists are. That's been a very practical application. And, you know, as I mentioned, continuously building relationships is what this is about. Educational activities, the opportunities are, you know, pretty broad. People can learn crafting, artisans can, you know, use the space.
I think this thing about publicity support through the website for businesses that are not physically in the RIC, one of the things that we've really been serious about is that this is not to compete with
Yes.
businesses that are well established in other communities. With the, you know, I'd love for the jewelry repair guy in Kingston to want to come to the RIC, but just in case he's happy in his storefront, we can publicize the services of other businesses as well.
And I'll just tell a little quick anecdote here. I spoke to a certain individual who runs a certain large reuse business selling used stuff here in Kingston, who had no idea really how to promote on Facebook and said that they totally relied on word of mouth. Well, I think, you know, the RIC is something that could help them with those sorts of things as well. Leading with training and community building. Areas of specialization, useful skills that can be applied toward jobs or applied toward handiwork or applied in many ways. Everything, as I mentioned, from artisans to workers. Budgeting and funding sources. I mean, we went into a great deal more detail in the final report, but, you know, not to keep you here all night with that. There's going to have to be an initial investment. Some of it may be ameliorated or recouped with a whole variety of funding sources that we have found. Any questions or thoughts about that? I won't read it to you.
I would like to make a comment and say that this is not in anyone's budget for next year. And I pointed that out at the legislative hearing for Ways and Means. There is a placeholder now that the legislative finance people put into the budget for next year, but it's not in the UCRRA budget or the county executive budget. And that means that at the moment, unless that changes, there is no funding to move this forward. But there is a very clear placeholder that the legislative staff wisely included in the budget amendment. And there has been a new committee formed. It's called the UCRRA Reform Committee. I'm not crazy about the title, but the important thing for people to know is that it, so I'm not. The Reform Committee is comprised of key stakeholders. So that includes the executive branch, the legislative branch, the Supervisors Association, and the UCRRA and others to review this project, to see how this project fits into a bigger overview that we're calling Zero Waste Implementation Plan. And that would look at what this project will handle and what it won't handle, and try to figure out how to maximize waste diversion. So there's the Zero Waste Implementation Plan, of which the Reuse Innovation Center is a portion. And I believe that that committee will also help determine where the funding is going to come from, because when this feasibility study was commissioned, the intention was for this year to have the feasibility study and next year to actually have it implemented. It sounds like it'll be implemented as a pilot, but even today there was some debate. Can we go for the whole project, you know, thinking about what it's going to become and planning for that now, or should we do as being recommended a pilot to sort of test
Yeah.
what's working or not?
Okay.
So I just want to give that update, especially with regard to budget.
Thank you, and Laura's got something in a second, but I just want to say, Dave has started these with no capital, but it's hard, it's arduous, it's seat of the pants, and it doesn't de-risk participation by partners. It doesn't really do that public investment in these public goals. So I think there's a lot of latitude for doing a short pilot or a longer pilot, you know, how nimble or how deliberate you want to be. So, you know, whatever the budget level, God love you for making sure that that happened. And Laura?
That's her previous comment. It was just still up on the
okay.
screen.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I did have a question or, you know, another point for funding, since this, I mean, this depends on whether this is going to be a not-for-profit or public benefit corporation. You know, in that case, they can go for the funding sources that were listed because those are for not-for-profits. But have you considered as a for-profit going to the IDA, since you'll be creating multiple jobs? And it is more industrial than anything else?
That could be done. We have only been charged with doing this part. And so it's really about who the county wants to partner with. But yeah, we think that having a nonprofit piece to receive tax deductible donations is critical, and to have a private sector business management partner that knows how to manage business. So yes to all.
Okay.
To follow up on that?
Yeah.
Is there a specific, from the county's perspective, is there a specific angle that you're looking for public-private partnership or what county
That committee hasn't met yet, so I can't speak on behalf of them. Personally, I think it should either be run by the county or the Resource Recovery Agency, and the Resource Recovery Agency has not been very stable over the last few years, so that might lend itself to the county. But again, I think that's the purpose of bringing together the key stakeholders, is for us to have that conversation, because what is important to the supervisors and the towns, which is a first line of defense, but to be determined, really. And I would like to ask, what is new about this presentation as compared to the earlier draft? In other words, what
There's a slide
comments-
on that.
You're gonna get to that?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a slide.
We have a slide.
Okay, I'm watching the time
Yeah.
because I have enough.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
Well, let's try to
Lively,
move
lively.
along here. Dave, can we briefly go over the siting considerations?
Yeah, one of the challenges to this is finding a site that meets a lot of needs, like public access and has outdoor space and has enough space and isn't very expensive. And and there's a lot of factors that go into it. So I think finding a site is like one of the things that would be a constant effort, even during the pilot, you know, where you're constantly looking for the right spot for its permanent location. And one approach would be to build a structure that is you know, meant for this purpose. Another one would be to try and adapt to an existing building, but it has been one of the challenges of placing a RIC, and a lot of it is the costs of rent. You know, that's like one of the big factors. And you know, the thing about Ulster County is that our vision of it is, because of the support of all of you folks, it feels like it could be the biggest and best reuse innovation center yet. And it you know, would part of that is the biggest, you know, trying to find a larger facility for it.
Okay, so stakeholder concerns and related updates. This is, I know it's a little small and hard to read. These are basically the comments and thoughts and concerns that we've understood from comments we've received on the final report and also previously on other phase deliverables. Specifically, you know, emphasis on upstream versus downstream materials. We felt it was necessary for us to emphasize that upstream diversion is better than downstream diversion if it can be accomplished, and in any way it can be accomplished, and the RIC should try to find all those ways that it can to do that. And then there's, you know, as you've noticed, there's discussion of like, what's the right ownership model? That's been a source of a lot of discussion. Relationship of RIC with existing reuse and repair businesses. We've tried to clarify that it would be one of harmony, not competition, and mutual support. Exactly how the rollout strategy should happen and in what order. All these things have been brought up. Different people had different opinions, but you know, we've updated the final report with, you know, the input from these stakeholders on these subject areas. Also, another thing is that transfer stations need to be included in the mix and in the planning in terms of working with the RIC and putting aside materials in some way, shape, or form, not just the main Ulster County resource recovery site transfer station on Flatbush Road. And other things, we put more visuals in here, we put more summaries, ownership structure, funding, you know. Any questions on that?
We're running short of time for questions, it turns out.
We are.
What was the last line on that slide?
Oh, hold on a second. Oh, sorry, that thing's in the way, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you know what? It was just a couple of ideas. Somebody had talked about food waste, and it's beyond scope. We were asked not to do organics.
Organics are out. And the last line is, somebody suggested a worker-owned cooperative kind of mode, but that came, you know, rather late in the game, and maybe it's something to think about. It's just we couldn't, you know, incorporate it this late in the game. So our conclusions and recommendations: focus on diverting materials definitely can be used, obviously, and has a known model to maximize reentry of material. Start with smaller scale proof of concept, very important to our suggestions here. We talked about all these things. Focus on training, make sure there's capacity building via training for deconstruction, for, you know, vastly more potential for diversion if that becomes the norm over time. Flow control, deconstruction ordinance, and establish diversion systems potentially at UCRA or in perhaps the city of Kingston.
And the town transfer station.
Yes,
and the town transfer stations, yes.
Yeah. I mean, really, like, design the whole system, you who know it best. Decide what the county stakeholders want as far as ownership. I mean, we think the ingredients of nonprofit, private, and governmental, that is the right, all those need to be in the mix. But it's really for the county to decide, and I think executive and legislative branch thinking together, what do we want?
This is, I don't know if we want to spend time on this, Dave. This is just yet another way to show you the variety of models that exist for reuse innovation centers that we
Yeah,
did look. So I
Yeah, I
think
know
I'm
we're-
just gonna
Yeah, we're
skip
gonna
this one.
slam.
And our recommendation at the bottom, which we've been talking about. Facility cost, this, there's so many different locations and possible costs. We made a model based on the assumption of a particular site, which is iPark 87 here in Kingston. Doesn't have to be there, but we had to come up with some kind of idea of what it might cost, given certain assumptions.
Doesn't the county own that?
The county is leasing at least part of it. We actually had a couple meetings with Dan Ahouse, who was managing that over there, and we understand that a big chunk of it has been leased to the Center for Workforce Innovation. And we're thinking that the training component of this is really nicely harmonious. They have a 13,000 square foot, which is much smaller than we're proposing, but a really nice potential incubation space. And then there's other space that the center could move into. And that $1 square foot is per month, but that's, yeah. So just, we looked at every commercial building that was available as of midsummer and its cost, and screened out the ones that were more than 10 miles from Upper, and screened out the ones that deliveries would have to go through a commercial or residential neighborhood, so that really on commercial roads, zoned for commercial or light industrial, and handy to go back and forth from the main transfer station. And there were a few of them. They mostly did not have the surrounding outdoor space. And the space at iPark, we just thought, the more we think about it, the more we think that's ideal, because of the expansion space and because of the synergies with other things that the county may be wanting to do.
Another approach, because rent is one of the hardest parts of this business. You need a lot of space to save a lot of stuff from the landfill, and a lot of those programs that aren't funded or materials that aren't worth a lot, but you still want to save them from the landfill, even though you're not making a profit off of them. Rent becomes a real problem. Paying for storage of all these materials is really problematic. So the idea of purchasing a property or having a building built and being able to have a lot of room at a relatively low price, and seems to be a real viable option if the support, meaning the funding, is available.
This is just basically a visual representation of what we've been talking about at a high level, on the order in which we anticipate things should happen to make our recommended version of the RIC happen. Groundwork, policy, and planning. You start thinking about it up front. Obviously, it doesn't get implemented right away. It needs to happen at the right time later. Proof of concept, fund and run deconstruction training on pilot projects for contractors first, then their workers. And begin piloting RIC activities and diversion of materials, because as soon as you do a project or two, you've gotten some materials and you can find places for them to go, and that's part of the proof of concept. At the same time, you're obtaining some initial storage location, even before you've got, your final location. And you're engaging people right away with pop-up sales, offering training, And then your evaluation point, how did the proof of concept phase work? Did it do what we hoped? What can we learn from it about how to move forward? And then development of the actual long-term RIC. And this is pretty much what we've said all along. And if you'll notice along the bottom, secure funding for operations as well as engaging buyers or donees for materials, recipients materials, as well as sellers or donors for materials on an ongoing basis throughout the life of the RIC. Good. Decisions to be made. What policies will the legislature, pursue in order to support the RIC?
I just want to say that I think that deconstruction is a really important place to start. There are models for that. Actually, that we've been working on that this past year, but it's infuriating to me that the county pays companies to do demolition without even requiring a deconstruction analysis.
Yeah. We should have emphasized that more because that's really solid. The report says start there.
And Dave's experience with that. So I'm committing to, bringing that forward in the coming year with the new legislature.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, then there's the ownership model. That obviously is a decision we've kind of covered. What materials collection systems will be established? And the other thing we mentioned, is that Ulster County itself may have deconstruction projects, whether there's an ordinance or not. They may have some sort of building project in which extra materials are generated when something new is being built or renovated or so forth. Materials come from all those areas. So, as an initial project or projects could come right from Ulster County activities if such a thing is going on. Finalize deciding what the components are, facility type and location. And that's our presentation. Does anybody have any questions on the Zoom? Any thoughts?
Can we get copies of the slides?
Yes, you can.
I don't know that into crowd, but it's New York State based circular deconstruction group, and they're focused on creating legislation on deconstruction. So it could be, a great collaboration too.
I'm going to give you my card. And put me in
Are you
touch.
familiar
Casey
with
is
that,
saying
Dave?
Crowd is a New York State network working on deconstruction legislation, yes?
Is it CROWD?
It's instead of 8,
Yeah.
it's a 0.
Oh, okay.
Medford, that's
I'm part of that effort.
Oh, Dave's in it, of course.
Okay. So it's national. I would be especially interested in hearing from people who are brand smack new to this conversation, because we just really, we gave you the thorough treatment.
Most of my adult life was in Portland, Oregon. I was a huge user of the rebuilding center, recycling center, scrap. There were multiple different streams and there were places for it. So I wanted to see this and just kind of have that lived experience of that and see how this pairs up or what this is innovating beyond. So that's what I'm doing today. This is exciting. This is where it is.
Was that in I missed what you said. Was that in Portland?
Yes.
Oh, I helped start the rebuilding center in Portland.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, that's one of our clients. But that was a long time ago.
that, but David Todd is building regenerative real estate. Tell us a little about what that is, or not?
It's well, just very sensitive to practices that support healthy community at all scales, whether it's agriculture practices, food growing, food systems, or just material sourcing like circularity would be something that would really interest us. We'd be interested in integrating this in development projects too. So,
Oh, you can be an early customer.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
awesome.
That'd be very eager.
And the Unitarians can be early customers.
This is such, the idea of sharing this with people that care, that don't know anything about this. And then sharing it with them, it's recorded, to be able to say this is an opportunity.
Yep.
And then, of course, the whole idea, you know, with the deconstruction and legislation and all of these, and I just did a reuse workshop with our religious education children from 3 to 8 year olds. So this can be the adult version of learning about reuse. I think this is great, and then they'll pass it on. And then it being recorded and being able to be accessible. So important that people learn about this, who care about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, yeah.
Great job.
Is this someone?
He's not, to my knowledge.
I,
He sent me a couple notes lately.
yeah, I'd be curious to see his response.
So
You know, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna, because I know we're getting close. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that, because I have this North American view of this topic, from helping so many people in so many different areas. And Ulster County is sitting on an opportunity to be the leader of the next generation of the circular economy, which is this concept of working together and not just trying to become another version of a linear economy retail store where everything is kind of on your own, and you're trying to do the right thing, but you're trying to do it the way the linear economy does it. We are the next the next generation, the next evolution of retail and businesses and workers, and and all of this, the workforce, the green workforce in this case, and the circular workforce, right? And so Ulster County is, as you're sitting on this opportunity, and it's because of the people attending this meeting and others that have helped us, and the support and the interest that we've seen. And I'm just really excited for you, because I get to do this 24/7 all year long. We started 2 reuse innovation centers this year. We've got 2 for next year, it looks like. And but they're all going to pale in comparison to what you guys could accomplish if you work together and get this funding set aside for this. And amazing things would happen in your community. I can't even wait to see it, from the benefits, of the center.
Yeah,
The thing,
David.
when you mentioned deconstruction and the importance of that, one of my friends in Portland, Durlove, has one of the biggest deconstruction services companies that's just continually hiring, growing in terms of workforce creation. It's a powerhouse what they've done. And they were huge advocates, of course, for the legislation to change policy to force deconstruction, but then that proliferated other deconstruction service organizations. And if
That's
the
great.
county needed any kind of connection to them as
Dave
thought
probably
leaders,
trained them.
Yeah.
Dur is a friend. He had trained. He's one of our clients. He had trained. attended one of my trainings. I was responsible for helping create the ordinance in Portland, Oregon for deconstruction. So I worked for the city of Portland and of course Metro as well to accomplish that, the first deconstruction ordinance in the country. So yeah, you keep bringing up examples and I'll keep telling you how I was involved. I guess I'm on a roll now.
We
Sounds
know
good.
you're everywhere, Dave.
Yeah.
It's just that there are some great examples, and we're taking information from all of our clients, people like Dur Lovett, that what we learned and how we have improved on that, how we've said that's first generation. Now, what does the second generation look like of these reuse of this reuse economy and the circular economy? So that's the exciting thing that we're hoping to bring to Ulster County is everything we've learned from operations like that, everything we've learned from places like Portland, and to bring them home to Ulster County and say, you're starting something new. This is the perfect time to do it better.
And I would like to invite people that want to work on a deconstruction resolution to let me know, because I'm stretched pretty thin, even though I just retired, and collaboratively designed legislation is the best legislation. So please, and that to me is low-hanging fruit, in addition to figuring out how this is going to be housed. But that work will be done by the reform committee.
That's great. And I would just say, we are in handoff mode, but not in bailout mode. And I think if we can do a lot of back and forth and thinking together over the coming weeks to just, we've tried to give you options to not over-determine it, but to not be too squishy. So as we go back and forth about budget scenarios and, sequencing of stuff, we're very committed to, love to be in those conversations. And then when you're ready to just huddle, we'll just go to the gym.
Yeah, and maybe switch into pilot mode at some point, right, Melissa, where we could help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the first thing is to pull that committee together, because I think they're going to have to make the recommendations on where it's going to be housed and which options to be following up in what order, even though you've laid out a good set of recommendations. I think the unanswered questions really have to be processed by that group, because it's a multi-stakeholder and it's formally appointed and so forth. So,
yeah.
Who all is a part of everything?
pardon?
Who all will be a part of that?
The legislative branch has a representative, the executive branch has a representative, the Supervisors Association, I don't remember who all else, but it appears that I'm going to end up chairing it, because, no, I take that back. Tracy Bartels is going to chair that, because I'm going to do the energy one. But we are going to have those completely open and try to include other major stakeholders that don't have a representative, like ballers, multifamily dwelling businesses. We want widespread, but in terms of actually making recommendations, that will hopefully be by consensus, but if not, by a vote of the people that are formally appointed, because the legislature created this committee, and that gives it some agency, I guess the right word is.
So, two things. So is it seems like the group that you're talking about, this committee, would benefit from the context that the consultants here already have for dollars and so on, and people that can be on this committee. So I'm hoping that will happen. But I'm also asking, is there a paid staff for this committee?
No. There is,
So
there are people that work in the legislature that are paid, but it's not like there's gonna be a single staff person. But if somebody in the legislature will be assigned to convene meetings and, take notes and provide that kind of assistance. But it'll be up to the committee members, and I believe that Chair Bartels is planning to convene the first meeting before the year.
And then will she continue?
Yes, even though she's no longer chair. One of the reasons we got that through. And I also want to mention that I spoke to the legislator where at least the pilot might be housed, and they are, as long as it's not bringing in garbage, they are very
Sweet.
open to it, at least not opposed to it. And I don't know whether that person was able to join, but since this is taped, I will
Yes, definitely.
get this over to them.
So I have another question then. So you don't have to name a name or anything, but was there anyone in your studies that actually said, this is really great and I would be interested in helping out? Is there anyone like that?
We were trying, there are people that we think maybe, but we don't have confirmations. And so we have, over the course of the year, talked with Amber Lashik from Redo Studios, who has a business in Brooklyn and a pop-up in Hudson, and she's all about one-of-a-kind furniture and home decor stuff. And we hope to lure them in. What's her name? Cynthia Power, who is a textile consultant, has not been able to make meetings, but has some contact. There's at least 4 textile upcycling businesses that we've discovered. One is called, I forget, but it's handbags made by women in recovery.
I think it's
Or-
unshattered.
Unshattered, yes. And 3 or 4 others. Karen Flynn at the fashion program at SUNY Ulster has connected us with some of those. And then, we were looking for barn recyclers, salvage people. We have architects that we've started to talk to that, are open to, sourcing and bringing stuff, not necessarily doing operations. But that's the last meeting. I don't think I mentioned that. We rescheduled that meeting to November 29th. Same back channel, same time slot, right in this room. And so we hope to have, at least a few people. And, we sat down, I think 3 different times with Leanne from the Habitat Restore, because we hope that they might want to, and we don't know. And certainly some of the other just salvagey kinds of businesses. And then Barbara, who's on the board of Arts Mid Hudson, is going to bring somebody from that board in to think about what we could do with art from salvaged and reused stuff.
Yeah, which some artists specialize in.
So thoughts? We good?
So as far as you mentioned the last and final event, which is the
29 to
Yes.
4 here.
yes.
And in between, it's just like all the clarifying you can do. I think we have still a couple of tweaks to do tonight or tomorrow on the report, but it's pretty much there. And we're here for you, you know, until we organically see the moment when you've got what you need and you're ready to sort of huddle.
And would it be okay to ask that anyone who has signed up or showed up get a copy of the slides?
Sure.
Because the video is long.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just want to zero in. And I
Yeah.
especially think that'll be useful for the upcoming committee.
You know what I did? Remind me to share this. I made a 6-page executive summary of the 27-page report.
Yes, you did.
Maybe share both.
You bet your booties. Yeah. Because we care.
And there's really a lot of value here. I just don't know how it's gonna play out. There's quite a few important decisions yet to be made. And I tried to get people to make them, but the committee was formed so late in the process that we have that committee and then we're gonna have a whole new legislature. I think a third of the legislature is gonna change.
You know, there's an advantage to being very slow and methodical, and we have reaped that advantage. There's also a disadvantage, that people are like, will you get done already and tell me when I should come and pay attention? So.
Well, and also climate change won't wait.
Right. We got it. All right. Thank you. Laura, Chris, any final thoughts or questions?
Laura's
Okay.
left us, I
Yeah,
think.
Laura
Probably
has
had to pick up the
grandchildren, I
kids.
think, so. Okay, we love you. Thank you, Dave.
Thank
We'll
you,
talk.
everyone.
Thanks.
Any concluding remarks, Europa?
Thank you all for coming and thank you for your work on this.
And when will the recording be available?
Thank you for your work on this.
Soon,
Is there,
when we get it together.
Okay,
A day or two.
is there,
oh, that's very.